I want you to picture a very specific, incredibly familiar moment. You know the one.
Oh, I bet I do.
Yeah. So you are sitting at your desk. It is late in the afternoon, right around that time when the light coming through the window takes on that heavy golden quality.
Right. Signaling that the day is just slipping away.
Exactly.
Hmm.
And you can feel this stiff, creeping tension starting at the base of your skull, kind of spiderwebbing down the back of your neck. The house or the office is totally quiet, except for the low, cold hum of the refrigerator somewhere in the background.
I can hear it right now.
Right. And there, sitting in the corner by the door, completely ignored, is your gym bag. You intended to grab it hours ago.
But you didn't.
No, you didn't. Instead, you find your hand reaching out for a sugary snack, or, your fingers clicking to watch just one more episode of whatever streaming service has captured your attention.
And then comes the wave of guilt.
Always. You feel this massive wave of guilt. But what if I told you that this guilt isn't a failure of willpower at all? What if that paralysis is actually a predictable biological misfire of your own brain? Today, we are tearing down the myth of self-discipline.
It completely changes the paradigm, when you realize you aren't fighting a moral failing, you're fighting a neurochemical default setting.
Yes.
The materials we are exploring today treat human behavior as, as a systemic biological puzzle. Most of us walk around believing that if we just gritted our teeth a little more, we'd achieve our goals.
Just push through the pain.
Right. But the evidence we had in front of us suggests that relying on sheer grit is basically the least effective strategy imaginable.
Which brings us to our mission for today. We have this massive stack of anonymous research here, and our goal for this in-depth exploration of today's source materials is to map out the invisible architecture of human behavior.
It's a fascinating architecture, too.
It really is. We are going to examine the mechanical gears of habit formation, the literal physical memory that gets stored inside our muscles, and the deep subconscious scripts that dictate our everyday reality.
Yeah, let's start with that first concept you mentioned.
The absolute myth of endless willpower.
Exactly. There is a real-world observation in the research involving a sprawling, highly successful technology firm. This was a campus with every amenity you could possibly imagine.
Like, what are we talking here?
We're talking lavish cafeterias, beach volleyball courts, the works. The human resources directors at this firm were utterly baffled.
Why?
Because they had funded these state-of-the-art wellness programs. Free, fully equipped gyms on site, free fitness classes, retirement planning seminars, stop smoking clinics.
Wow, all free.
Entirely free of charge. They were handing their workforce the keys to long-term health and stability on a silver platter. Yet participation was incredibly low. The employees simply were not using the resources.
See, the natural assumption there would be that the employees were just lazy, or, I don't know, that the programs weren't good enough. You'd think the HR department's first move would be to buy better treadmills.
Right, or offer more exciting classes.
Yeah, but the researchers brought in to study this didn't change the programs at all. They changed the calendar.
Which is such a brilliant pivot.
It really is. They discovered that the secret wasn't what was being offered, but when it was offered.
And that brings us to a fascinating cognitive phenomenon. Human beings do not process time as a continuous, unbroken line.
Which is weird to think about because time is continuous.
It is, physically. But if our brains processed it that way, we would be overwhelmed by a massive, unsegmented data stream of memories and failures. Instead, the brain's hippocampus, that's the region largely responsible for learning and memory, categorizes our experiences into discrete chapters.
We partition our lives.
Exactly. When you introduce a temporal landmark, like a birthday, New Year's Day, or even just a Monday, the brain uses that date as a file separator.
Like a folder.
Yes, it essentially closes the folder on the old self and opens a fresh, pristine folder for the new self.
They call it the fresh start effect in the materials.
Yeah.
And it makes a lot of intuitive sense. It's like clearing the cache on your web browser.
That's a great analogy.
Right. The system suddenly feels lighter and ready to process new information without all the junk slowing it down. But I have to push back here for a second.
Okay.
If I fail on my diet on a Tuesday, and I tell myself, you know what, I will just start again next Monday, aren't I just procrastinating? Like, is relying on a calendar date just a psychological trick we use to excuse our own laziness for the rest of the week?
It might feel like procrastination, but biologically, it is a necessary cognitive partitioning. Let's look at how the brain protects your ego and your sense of self-efficacy.
Okay, how does it do that?
When you fail on a Tuesday, your brain tags that present version of you with the emotional weight of failure. If you try to restart on Wednesday, you are still operating within that same failure folder.
Oh, man. So I'm dragging Tuesday's mess into Wednesday.
Exactly. The neural pathways associated with disappointment and frustration are primed and active. You are carrying the psychological baggage of Tuesday. A temporal landmark, however, provides the psychological distance required to sever that association.
So Monday really is a clean slate, biologically.
Yes. The brain quite literally attributes the Tuesday failure to a past inferior version of yourself, freeing your current cognitive resources to focus on the new goal without the drag of recent guilt.
Okay, so the cognitive partition allows us to mentally drop the baggage.
But here's a massive roadblock I see with this. A Monday is only 24 hours long.
True.
The fresh start gives you that initial burst of optimism to pack the gym bag and walk out the door. But how does that help us 3 weeks later, on a random rainy Thursday when the motivation is completely dead and the cache of failures has filled right back up? The calendar trick surely runs out of steam.
It absolutely runs out of steam, and the research is very clear about that limitation. The fresh start effect is a spark, but it is not the fuel.
So what's the fuel? To understand how we keep going when the spark dies, we have to look deeper into the biological machinery of the brain. Specifically, the amygdala.
The amygdala.
Right. This is a tiny almond-shaped cluster of nuclei deep within the temporal lobe, and it acts as your brain's ultimate sensory filter.
The way the materials explain this filter is incredibly stark. The amygdala doesn't care about your long-term goals at all, does it?
Not even a little bit.
It basically processes every single thing you experience through a rigid binary system. Is this immediate input pleasant, or is it unpleasant?
That binary filter is an ancient evolutionary survival mechanism. If the amygdala perceives something as pleasant, like a source of sugar, a warm fire, or social validation, it triggers an approach response.
Meaning we want to go toward it.
Exactly. It releases a cascade of neurochemicals, including dopamine, encouraging you to move toward the stimulus. But if it perceives something as unpleasant, physical exertion, cold weather, complex cognitive strain, it triggers an avoidance response.
It tells us to run away.
It spikes your cortisol and tells you to pull away.
So when I am sitting at my desk looking at that gym bag, and I feel a profound sense of resistance, that isn't me being a weak person.
No, not at all.
That is my amygdala doing a rapid calculation, realizing that lifting weights is going to cause micro tears in my muscle fibers and elevate my heart rate, and it is screaming, avoid this.
That is the exact neurochemical reality. For our ancient ancestors, expending unnecessary physical energy was a death sentence. Calories were scarce.
Right, you didn't just go for a jog for fun in the Stone Age.
Exactly. Your brain is operating on ancient hardware that prioritizes immediate energy conservation and immediate gratification over a 10-year cardiovascular health plan.
Wow.
The people who successfully build difficult habits are not simply suffering through the avoidance response using immense self-discipline. They have biologically bypassed the amygdala's resistance.
How do they do that?
They have shifted the activity from the avoidance category into the approach category.
And they do this using a strategy the researchers call temptation bundling. The premise here is that you take a highly desirable short-term pleasure and you inextricably link it to a beneficial long-term chore. There is a concrete example in the text about a university student.
The one with the television show, right?
Yeah. This student was completely addicted to a very dramatic television series. And the student also desperately needed to start exercising, but hated the gym. So the solution was to make an ironclad rule. The student was only allowed to watch this specific television series while physically moving on a machine at the gym.
Which is brilliant.
No watching on the couch, no watching in bed, only at the gym.
Think about the chemical shift happening in that student's brain. The anticipation of finding out what happens next in the television series triggers a massive dopamine release.
Because of the cliffhangers.
Exactly. And because the show is now entirely conditional on being at the gym, the brain begins to associate the gym environment itself with the impending dopamine reward.
So they actually want to go to the gym.
Yes. The student isn't craving cardiovascular exercise. They are craving the narrative resolution of the show. But the amygdala gives the green light to the gym because it is the required toll to access the pleasure.
So the secret isn't supreme self-discipline. It's basically bribing ourselves.
Well, I wouldn't call it just a bribe. It's solving a biological mismatch. Temptation bundling artificially attaches immediate joy to delayed benefits, entirely bypassing the brain's resistance.
I understand the mechanism, but let me introduce a friction point here. Doesn't this run the risk of just ruining the television show?
How so?
Well, if I force myself to watch something I love while I am exhausted, sweating, and miserable on a treadmill, won't my brain just start associating my favorite show with the pain of running? Won't the avoidance response bleed over and poison the thing I actually enjoy?
That is a highly logical concern, but it misunderstands the raw power of dopamine prediction errors.
Dopamine prediction errors.
Right. Dopamine is not just a pleasure chemical, it is a seeking chemical. It drives behavior toward a predicted reward. Because the narrative of the television show is designed to constantly open new psychological loops, cliffhangers, unresolved tension, the brain's desire to close those loops and receive the dopamine payoff is significantly stronger than the low-level physical discomfort of the treadmill.
So the craving overrides the sweat.
Exactly. The immediate gratification of the entertainment entirely overrides the delayed physical fatigue. The amygdala registers the net experience as a positive approach scenario.
It is, essentially speaking, the brain's ancient language. We are trading immediate joy for delayed benefits. But even the sources concede that temptation bundling is not foolproof.
Oh, absolutely not.
There are days when the weather is terrible, the couch is incredibly soft, and we simply break our own rules. We watch the show on the couch and ignore the gym entirely. So when internal negotiation fails, what is the failsafe?
When you can no longer trust your internal negotiation, you have to remove the negotiation entirely. This introduces the psychological maneuver known as commitment devices.
Commitment devices.
Right. You make a choice in the present, while you are in a calm, rational state of mind that deliberately restricts your own freedom of choice in the future. You are building a trap for your future self.
The sources cite a brilliant historical context for this. It points back to an ancient mythological hero navigating his ship through treacherous waters.
The one with the irresistible song.
Yes. He knew his ship was about to pass the island of creatures whose song was so irresistibly beautiful that any sailor who heard it would steer their ship directly into the rocks and drown.
It is the ultimate metaphor for biological temptation overpowering rational thought.
Exactly. So the hero knew that once he heard the song, his rational mind would vanish. He didn't rely on his willpower to steer the ship safely. Instead, he ordered his crew to physically tie him to the ship's mast with heavy ropes.
And he had them plug their own ears with wax.
Right. And he gave strict orders not to untie him, no matter how much he begged or threatened them once the song began. He bound his future self to prevent a disaster.
And we see modern iterations of this concept everywhere. Consider specialized financial products.
Like what?
Well, a person who struggles with impulse spending can set up a bank account that completely locks their funds until a specific date, perhaps years in the future. There is absolutely no option for early withdrawal, or the penalty is so catastrophic that it mathematically deters any attempt to access the money.
You literally can't get to it.
Exactly. There is also an incredible real-world experiment mentioned in the text involving medical professionals. Hospitals were dealing with a massive issue of doctors overprescribing antibiotics when they weren't medically necessary.
Just to get the patients out the door.
Partially, yeah. The doctors were doing it to placate demanding patients, avoiding the uncomfortable confrontation of saying no.
That makes sense. So what do they do?
The intervention was stunningly simple. They had the doctors sign a large, highly visible public pledge declaring their commitment to responsible prescribing practices, and they hung this signed poster right in the examination room.
Wow. Right where the patient can see it.
Exactly. That intervention leverages social pressure and the human desire for internal consistency. By putting their signature on a public wall, the doctors severely restricted their future freedom to take the easy way out during a tense consultation.
Because if they write the prescription, they look like hypocrites.
Precisely. To write an unnecessary prescription would require them to actively violate a public promise they had made to the very patient sitting on the exam table. It weaponized their professional pride and their fear of hypocrisy, turning those emotions into a barrier against bad habits.
I want to pause on the sheer sensory reality of utilizing a commitment device.
Yeah.
Like I am trying to imagine the physical sensation of waking up on a freezing cold morning.
The worst.
Your bed is incredibly warm. Every fiber of your being wants to cancel your workout, but then you remember you paid a non-refundable exorbitant deposit to a personal trainer.
If you're not getting that money back.
Nope. Or you remember you promised to pick up a friend, and they are currently standing in a dark street corner waiting for you. You feel this intense, hot flare of annoyance.
Oh yeah, you're mad at your past self.
So mad. You desperately want to back out, but you realize you have successfully cornered yourself. You have locked all the exits. It is
Yeah.
such a bizarre paradox. We have to deliberately restrict our own freedom in order to achieve true personal freedom from our destructive impulses.
It is a profound paradox. Behavioral economists categorize people into two camps regarding this paradox: the naive and the sophisticated.
Okay, what's the difference?
A naive planner genuinely believes their future self will be just as disciplined and rational as their present self. They think, I don't need a locked bank account, I simply will choose not to spend the money.
Which just never works out.
Rarely. A sophisticated planner, on the other hand, possesses a humbling, radical self-awareness. They know their future self is weak, prone to fatigue, and easily swayed by the amygdala. Therefore, they outsource their discipline to their environment. They take the decision entirely out of their own hands.
But the constant friction of these decisions, the mental tug of war between the sophisticated planner and the exhausted future self, it doesn't just exist in our minds. This was perhaps the most startling revelation in the source materials for me.
The physical impact.
Yes, the psychological battles we fight every day are leaving a literal physical imprint on our anatomy.
This is where we have to transition our understanding from behavioral psychology into physical anatomy, specifically examining a structure known as the posterior muscular chain. The mind and the body are not separate silos. They are a continuous feedback loop.
Let's clearly define this anatomical structure for a second. The posterior muscular chain is a continuous interlocking network of muscles, fascia, and connective tissue.
It's massive.
It begins at the crown of your head, travels down the back of your neck, down the entire length of your spine across your glutes, and extends down the back of your thighs and calves, all the way to the soles of your feet. It functions as one massive, interconnected web.
These are the strongest muscles in the human body, primarily responsible for keeping us upright against the constant downward pull of gravity. However, the critical insight from the research is that these muscles are highly reactive to our psychological states.
They aren't just for lifting things.
Right. They do not merely respond to physical loads like lifting a heavy box. They react continuously to our stress hormones, our unspoken anxieties, and our emotional burdens.
It makes you rethink all those everyday metaphors we use. We say someone is carrying the weight of the world on their shoulders, or we complain that we have a lot on our back right now.
We use those phrases so casually.
But the anatomy suggests they are shockingly literal. The body physically responds to an emotional burden by rigidifying this exact muscular chain.
To understand the mechanism here, we have to look at the neuromuscular junction. When you experience a moment of acute psychological stress, perhaps you are suppressing a burst of anger during a meeting, or you are overwhelmed by a looming deadline, your sympathetic nervous system activates.
The fight or flight response.
Exactly. Your body releases cortisol and adrenaline. Even if you are sitting perfectly still in an office chair, your brain is preparing for a physical confrontation. This chemical flood triggers a constant low-level release of acetylcholine at the neuromuscular junctions along your posterior chain.
So your muscles are getting a signal to tense up.
Yes. Your muscles are receiving a continuous chemical signal to contract, to brace, to act as a defensive shield. Over time, this chronic contraction causes the surrounding fascia, the connective tissue, to literally stiffen and shorten. The muscles forget how to return to their baseline state of relaxation.
I want everyone listening to bring their attention to their own body right now.
Good idea.
Take a slow, deep breath. Notice exactly where your shoulders are positioned. Are they creeping up toward your ears?
Mine definitely were just now.
Mine too. You might suddenly realize you have been holding them in a defensive, braced shrug for the last 4 hours without noticing. Or think about that sudden sharp ache you get in your lower back late on a Friday afternoon.
Oh, the Friday ache.
You haven't done any heavy lifting. You haven't strained anything biomechanically. The ache seems to have no physical cause, but it predictably arrives at the end of a highly stressful, emotionally taxing week.
Your body is keeping a ledger of your emotional state. And this brings us to a vital therapeutic concept the sources refer to as emotional gymnastics.
Emotional gymnastics, I like that phrase.
Because this muscular tension is inextricably linked to your emotional state, you cannot simply force these muscles into compliance. You cannot aggressively stretch away years of accumulated psychological bracing.
Wait, why not? If a muscle is shortened and tight, isn't the logical physiological response to pull it and stretch it back out? Like just go to a yoga class and push through it.
If you try to aggressively stretch a chronically locked posterior chain, you trigger the muscle spindle reflex.
What?
The muscle spindle reflex. The muscle spindles are sensory receptors within the muscle belly that detect changes in length. If you stretch them too quickly or too forcefully, the nervous system perceives it as a threat of tearing.
So it panics.
Exactly. And it fires a reflex arc, causing the muscle to contract even harder in self-defense. You are essentially fighting your own nervous system.
That sounds counterproductive.
It is. The approach detailed in the text requires incredibly slow, precise, and gentle movements. It involves turning the mind's attention inward and consciously signaling safety to the nervous system, allowing the fascia to gradually unknot itself.
And the physical reactions described when people finally achieve this release are wild.
They really are.
When individuals allow this rigid posterior chain to truly soften, the body often spontaneously discharges the trapped emotional memories that caused the tension in the first place. The text details instances of people experiencing spontaneous, uncontrollable shivering.
Just shaking.
Yeah. Some individuals burst into tears without feeling any explicit cognitive sadness. Others report a sudden, intense rush of heat flooding through their limbs.
It is the literal thawing of a frozen physical response. When the chronic contraction is released, the trapped kinetic energy, the unexpressed fight-or-flight response that was locked in the tissue, finally completes its cycle.
That's incredible.
It demonstrates that a suppressed negative emotion doesn't just evaporate into the ether, it sets up camp in your spinal muscles. It builds a home in the fascia of your neck. Your personal history is mapped out on your back.
Which is a heavy realization. If our physical posture and our muscular tension are literally shaped by the scripts of our past failures and stresses, how do we possibly rewrite that script going forward? How do we change the internal dialogue that is creating all this tension and resistance in the first place?
This brings us to a profound shift in how we understand subconscious programming. We spend an enormous amount of time and money focusing on input.
Input meaning what?
We read motivational books, we listen to affirmations, we seek out mentors to tell us we are capable. But the materials reveal a fascinating quirk of human neurobiology. The brain prioritizes output, far above input.
Let me make sure I am grasping the scale of this. You are saying that I could have 100 brilliant, supportive people tell me, "You are a capable person, you can achieve this," but my brain won't fully absorb it if my own output contradicts them.
Exactly. The brain is incredibly sensitive to the auditory feedback loop of your own voice and to the motor cortex activation required to form spoken words.
So speaking out loud matters.
Immensely. When you speak out loud or when you run a strong internal monologue, your brain treats that output as the ultimate ground truth. If your spoken words output the phrase, "I'll try," or "I'm not sure I can handle this," the brain immediately acts like a search engine.
Searching for what?
It scans your vast subconscious archives to find historical evidence supporting your doubt. It validates your output by bringing up every memory of past failure to justify your spoken hesitation.
Oh, man. So it's actively trying to prove you right when you doubt yourself. But what if I output a statement of absolute certainty, even if it feels artificial or forced in the moment? Like if I say out loud, "I am going to handle this situation."
The brain behaves entirely differently. It recognizes the output, and it scrambles to search its memories and skills to prove that new statement true.
Even if I'm basically lying to myself.
Yes. It begins filtering your environment for opportunities and resources that align with your spoken conviction. The text explores some of the more extreme clinical applications of this phenomenon, moving into the realm of intense visualization and mental regression.
Yes, the concept of exploring alternate personas. Sounds almost theatrical, but the clinical results are staggering. The materials describe therapeutic techniques where individuals use deep relaxation to mentally step completely outside of their current identity.
They leave themselves behind.
Right. They visualize themselves in a completely different circumstance, or they actively adopt the persona of someone entirely different.
The mechanism behind this is brilliant. Let's say you suffer from a crippling fear of public speaking, and you try to mentally rehearse giving a speech as yourself. You immediately run into the brick wall of your own historical baggage.
Because you remember every time you stammered or forgot your lines?
Exactly. Your brain accesses your previous failures, your posterior chain tightens, and your amygdala screams at you to avoid the stage. But if you engage in a visualization exercise where you embody a completely different persona, someone who is effortlessly charismatic and confident, You bypass the ego entirely.
You are removing your own identity from the equation. You allow your brain to practice the feeling and the neurochemical state of success without the pressure of your own perceived flaws getting in the way. It is a radical form of perspective shifting.
Conversely, the materials highlight the absolute tragedy of negative programming, particularly during the developmental stages of childhood. The subconscious mind is fiercely dedicated to internal consistency.
It wants the story to match the reality.
Right. If you have a highly intelligent child, but they are repeatedly told by authority figures, or they begin repeatedly telling themselves that they are slow or stupid, the subconscious mind accepts this spoken script as the objective reality,
Even if it's completely false.
even if it's completely false. The brain will then actively regulate the child's behavior, their attention span, and their cognitive performance to perform below their actual baseline, simply to ensure their reality matches the script they have been given. The brain will literally orchestrate failure to maintain consistency with the spoken identity.
That is utterly heartbreaking. But it really underscores the immense, undeniable power of the narrative we choose to output. There is a phenomenal real-world example of this in the sources involving a world-famous, highly ranked athlete, a tennis player.
Oh, this story is incredible.
Yeah. This individual was struggling terribly on the world stage. His career was in a rapid downward spiral. He was famous for a very flashy, aggressive style of play, but he was consistently losing matches to opponents ranked far below him.
He was falling apart.
Totally. He was physically exhausted, mentally burnt out, and frankly, he hated the game.
Let's analyze his internal script at that time. He believed his entire value, his primary strength, was hitting the perfect, impossible, highlight reel knockout shot every single time he swung the racket.
Right. He was trying to win every single point by being superhuman. He was outputting a script that demanded absolute perfection on every volley. It was an exhausting, highly stressful, internal demand that spiked his cortisol and tightened his muscles.
Which ruined his physical performance.
Exactly. Then he has a conversation with a veteran player, someone known for being a strategic, steady thinker rather than a flashy talent.
Yeah.
And this veteran gives him a completely different script to output.
A total paradigm shift.
He tells him to stop trying to hit the perfect shot. He tells him to reframe his entire cognitive approach to the game.
Yeah.
Just keep the ball in play, hit it safely over the net, recognize that the opponent is human and has weaknesses, and let the opponent make the unforced error.
He changed the script from "I must be flawless" to "I just need to stay in the game and let gravity do the work."
It was a massive pivot. Instead of focusing on his own grueling need for perfection, he shifted the burden of perfection to the other side of the net. He just focused on returning the ball reliably. It was a simple shift in his internal mental script, and that single psychological change completely resurrected his career, leading to an incredible string of championship victories.
What is most crucial to understand about this story is that his physical skills did not spontaneously improve overnight. His fast twitch muscle fibers were exactly the same.
His racket was the same.
His cardiovascular capacity was the same. What changed was the subconscious programming directing those physical tools. By feeding his brain a different, more achievable objective, he drastically reduced his cognitive load. He lowered his cortisol levels, which in turn reduced the physical tension in his posterior chain, allowing his natural, deeply ingrained physical abilities to flow automatically without the rigid blockage of anxiety.
It makes you marvel at the reality of our internal lives. We are essentially the directors, the scriptwriters, and the lead actors in our own internal stage plays. We aren't just passive observers reading lines that were handed to us by our circumstances. We can actively rewrite the script.
We can rehearse success.
We can rehearse success in our minds before we ever step onto a tennis court or into a tense boardroom or into the gym.
And we must emphasize to the listener that this is not magical thinking. It is not just wishing upon a star and hoping reality bends to your will.
Right, it's biology.
This is the application of neuroplasticity. By intentionally feeding the brain a positive illusion, a spoken statement of capability, or a vivid visualization of success, the brain responds chemically. It begins building new neural pathways and searching for the physical mechanisms to make that illusion a reality. It constructs the infrastructure to support the narrative you insist upon.
Wow. As we start to synthesize all these incredible overlapping threads from the research, I find myself looking back at that highly relatable situation we started with. The tension creeping down the neck, the humming refrigerator, the ignored gym bag sitting in the afternoon light.
It looks a little different now, doesn't it?
When you look at that scenario through the lens of everything we have discussed, The amygdala, the posterior chain, the cognitive partitions, it looks fundamentally different. It strips away the shame.
Exactly.
It no longer feels like a personal moral failing that you didn't pick up the bag. We are not static, hopelessly flawed creatures trapped by our bad habits or our stiff backs. We are highly adaptable, incredibly complex biological systems. And more importantly, we have the tools to redesign those systems.
We possess the architectural blueprints to bypass our own resistance.
Exactly. We can use strategic timing, utilizing the fresh start effect to clear our mental cache and drop the baggage of past failures. We can use biological hacks like temptation bundling to speak directly to the dopamine pathways in our amygdala, turning avoidance into approach.
We can deploy commitment devices to lock our future, exhausted selves into the good choices we made when we were strong.
Right. We can learn the physical art of emotional gymnastics, slowly releasing the trapped physical tension in our posterior chain so that our bodies are no longer fighting our minds. And perhaps most importantly, we can carefully guard the words we speak aloud, understanding that our brain is constantly listening and treating our spoken words as absolute defining commands.
If we connect all of this to the broader picture of human potential, the ultimate takeaway is one of profound, scientifically backed agency. The architecture of your daily behavior is largely invisible, running on ancient evolutionary hardware and subconscious scripts. Yes, it is invisible, but it is entirely malleable. You are the architect. You have the capacity to redraw the blueprints at any given moment.
Which leaves us with a lingering, provocative question for you, the listener, as we wrap up this exploration. We have seen the evidence. Your brain is always listening to your output, constantly scanning your words to construct your reality. Your body is quite literally keeping the score of your emotions, mapping your stress into the fibers of your muscles. So as you stand up from your desk today, or as you look at that gym bag slouching by the door, or as you face whatever challenge has been paralyzing you, wait, let me rephrase that without the pause.
All right.
As you face whatever challenge has been paralyzing you, what is the very next sentence you're going to say out loud to yourself? Because whatever it is, your brain is already going to work to make it true.
Choose your words carefully. They are instructions.
Thank you for joining us on this incredible journey through the mind and the body. Keep questioning your defaults, keep exploring your potential, and we will catch you next time.